Hello and welcome to the video. In this video I'll be giving what I hope are very helpful hints and tips around recipe entry for Brewfather users. I am very proud to tell you that this video guide was previewed and then endorsed by the developer of Brewfather before being made live on YouTube. Before I start the guide, if you are new to Brewfather, then visit the website shown on screen now. Brewfather can be used on devices that have a web browser, including computers and smart devices that run, for example, Android or iOS. Both these mobile platforms also have dedicated apps. There are both free and subscription versions of Brewfather. Please see the website for further details. Let's jump straight in and create a new recipe by clicking the plus symbol in the top right hand side of the screen. Then you need to set which brewing system you're going to use for your recipe. Do this by clicking the top middle button here marked Change. This brings up a menu of various different systems that are available by default, and more can be added, but let's just select one at random for this tutorial. Before you click Save on your profile, it is vital to make sure that the boil time in the top right here is where you want it, and also the batch volume is the actual amount you wish to brew. To the left of this section you can also choose if the volume is target to the kettle or the fermenter. Easier for most to go with fermenter, I would think. Further down we have efficiency. This is very important and is broken down into both mash and brewhouse. I guess mash efficiency is obvious that it just refers to the mash itself, but brewhouse efficiency is the overall figure including all losses from the start to the finish of the beer process to the bottle or keg. To be true to your brewing and your recipe, it is vital that you tweak these efficiency levels to what is your norm. Do be aware that every system has a sweet spot, and grain under and over this will have some effect. If you are not sure, then stick to the default, but I would strongly suggest that you track this using Brewfather as you brew and narrow it down so that you are brewing true. There are plenty more settings in this section that you can tweak over time if you actually need to, but for most keeping it simple will be enough. If you are interested in adding in equipment that is not within Brewfather by default, then please refer to this great video guide made by Brian at Short Circuited Brewers YouTube channel. He goes through the full process in detail, and I believe this will prove to be very useful to those that need to do this. Once you are done here, then click Save at the bottom right, and that is your equipment set up. Now it's time to build an example recipe, starting with fermentables. To add some, just use the Add button here within the section. This brings up this box, and by using the search function we can look for grain to match our recipe. At this stage I will just add one to each weight for now, and the method I am showing you here will work irrespective of if you are using metric or imperial measurements. Once you have added this in, then click the Save box on the bottom right and repeat until you have added all the grain or fermentables that you intend to use. Most ingredients will need just the first few letters to find in the search box, but some require more to narrow the search down. So here we have 3 types of grain, and you can see that each at this stage is a third of our fermentables. It is a very good idea to view your grain bill in terms of percentage ratios of grain. You will note that most recipes are shared this way online and in books. By clicking the percentage sign here we can now set our grain ratios. Once you have set your ratios, then do check at the top to make sure they add up to 100%. You can then click Set at the bottom right. Next, let's decide how much alcohol we want. Access this by clicking the OG button here. Let's start with 1.060, hit Scale and move along. We can always change this later, just like everything else in Brewfather. Do note that as soon as you hit that scale button, everything changes in your top right data area, as you can see here. You will also notice in this section that there is a reference to style here, and in the top right above the scale there is a select button that leads us to beer styles. When you hit select, you can then see a list of styles along with the best matches for your current recipe as it stands, all offered by percentage match. This is super handy, especially if you are writing recipes for competition. For this example it seems that we are in American style India Pale Lager territory, so let's just go with that. Once again this changed the data in our scale with that satisfying shift. What we can see now are guidelines as to the minimum and maximum values for the style in various categories. Again, super handy. We can see on the top line here under ABV that the acceptable amount to have is between 5.6 to 7%. This recipe is currently at 6%, shown here with the blue line. This next line covers OG, short for original gravity, which relates to the fermentables that we added earlier. We are also shown that anywhere from 1.050 to 1.065 is acceptable, and that we are currently at 1.060 as chosen earlier. Moving down a little further now, we also have a number for EBC, which stands for European Brewing Convention, which relates to colour, very similar to SRM or Standard Reference Method in the US, which you can switch to if you prefer it within the settings, along with switching from metric to imperial if it pleases you. The minimum, maximum and current is displayed in the same way, which I guess needs no further explanation. We also have guidelines for FG or final gravity, IBU or international bittering units, and BUGU, which is the ratio of bittering units versus gravity units. Or said otherwise, bitterness versus alcohol. None of these are true right now because we have not added our yeast or hops. So let's do that now, starting with our yeast. Like everything, yeast has its own section in Brewfather, and on the desktop this is at the bottom right hand side of the screen. Maybe you already have yeast in stock, so you can simply add that in by searching for the name, or as I am doing here, simply search for lager and see what suggestions pop up. Here I will simply pick one at random. Once this is saved, then here it is within our recipe. You will see the next area down from yeast lets you set a fermentation profile. Clicking change as I just did gives you access to your already made profiles like this, and edit lets you add new ones. I'm going to select lager here and then set things up further. This then brings up this section. Brewfather has a very good contemporary lager profile that works very nicely. You will note that there is also the option for pressure fermentation at the top here, which then unlocks the option of being able to set the pressure for each step. Once you have entered all this and all is to your satisfaction, then click the green bottom button, as usual, to save, and you will be greeted with your profile on screen. Also useful in this section, Brewfather has a calculator that can be utilised to judge the correct pitching rate for your yeast and also for building starters. This can be accessed by selecting the calc button right here. This offers advice and selection. In this case we have a gravity of 1.060, which is right on the edge, so I have selected the next pitch rate up to be safe. This then tells us how many packets are needed, in this case a whopping 5, so I would either change the yeast or make a starter, in this case with a real recipe. Let's now move on to hops. We can now see from our style guide here that this one requires between 30 to 70 IBU. We are now at 6.2% alcohol thanks to our yeast, which is almost at the midway point for this style. So with this in mind, one good way to go is to go midway with our bittering too, which is between 30 to 70 IBU, meaning the middle is 50. I am now going to add 4 hop additions in a similar way that I did with the grain. This hop section is just above the yeast area, and to add hops simply select the add button on the top right. Use the search box to find the hops you are looking for, just like you did with everything else here. I am going with Warrior for my first addition at 60 minutes for bittering, and as before I am simply going to add 1 unit to the weight. Please do note that you will get a percentage figure here for the alpha acid percentage, which is essentially the bittering capability of the hop. It is totally essential that you have this number set to the actual alpha acid percentage of the hops that you are going to use. If not, then once again you will not be brewing true to your recipe. Those that do not adjust these figures do find that often the end beer is nothing like it should be, and in some cases that ends up down the drain. In my book there is only one thing worse than wasted money, and that is wasted beer, and in this case you will have done both. Well, not quite true, but anyway. I am also adding hop additions for 15 minutes for flavour, 0 minutes for aroma, and then a dry hop for even more. I'm not really this fast at doing this, just in case you wondered. You can thank that modern marvel that is video editing. For this third edition we need to change the use box here from boil to aroma hop stand, which is essentially the 0 minute edition, otherwise known as knockout or whirlpool hops. Within this section you will note that you can also change this hop stand temperature as well as how long you want to do the stand for. A similar procedure is needed for our last edition, the dry hops. When dry hopping is selected, the time element changes to days in keeping with dry hopping times. So here are our hop additions, and right now they are all set at 1 gram in weight, but this is certainly not enough for any beer style, let alone an IPA, but it is a faster way to enter the hops ready for the next changes. So we will now change them to give this beer 50 IBU as that safe middle ground that we, or rather I, decided on earlier. I suggest starting with the later additions first for flavour and aroma. I'm going to change the additions of each of these to 30 grams by clicking the line of each one, adjusting and saving. This is not terrible for this style, but merely an example really. Do note that our bittering hop is still at 1. I will now select the IBU button here to the left of the add button and add in the chosen 50 IBU. This will simply adjust our bittering hop to where it needs to be to give the recipe an overall IBU of 50. You can now see that the hop addition has automatically changed, as has our scale. This is now nicely balanced, which is great if this is what you are looking for. The choice of course is yours. This is of course just one method. Let's look at one more. The vast majority of professional recipes will give an IBU score for each addition, or perhaps you have found your own sweet spots for IBU at various stages of a recipe and wish to use these. This is certainly quick and easy to change in Brewfather to adjust to your own hop's alpha acid percentage. In this hop addition example we have a current IBU of 3.9 shown in the top left here, but if this particular addition requires an IBU of 5 then we can simply add more hops to our amount by adjustment until we see the desired IBU score. Nice and easy. Let's now look at mash profiles. This area is found at the bottom left of the screen on a desktop. If we click the change button here, then up comes various profiles that can be used for different reasons as stated by their profile names. It has to be said that if you are using modern malt then this is less relevant these days than it would have been some time back, but it still holds value in some areas. If you click the edit button instead, then you can go deeper into your chosen profile and also add further steps using the add step button on the bottom left of the box. Another area that is very important to your recipes is water. This section is found at the bottom of the screen on the desktop version. We are on the left hand side of this and the information here shows the volumes that are involved in your brew, including mash and sparge water so that you can prepare. To the right of this information you can see a figure for pH which is currently in red, meaning that it is not currently ideal. To the right of this is the calc button. Let's click into this now and take a look. This section starts by giving you a nice summary of your water, looking at grain, then volumes and then your water source. Most people find it easy enough to find most of this data, except for the last one, the HCO shown here. If your pH is less than 8.4, just multiply the alkalinity, often shown as CaCO3, by 1.22 to convert it to HCO3. I've put this clearly up on screen now just to make it easier for those that need to use it. Below this we have a target water profile. Let's select this now. We have profiles here to suit a wide variety of styles by default, and you can also add your own in. For this one I'm going to select the hoppy profile. By clicking this auto button, Brewfather then calculates water additions for you, and these are presented below. This can be calculated for just your mash or sparge water or both as you see fit. If you click the settings button here, then you can also set up Brewfather so that only chemicals that you wish to use are shown. Very nice. This leads us to the last section that I'm going to cover in this guide, the miscellaneous section, which is on the desktop between your fermentables and mash profile. You can see that our water additions are already shown here. Some examples of other items that can be put in here are firstly fining agents that can be used at various stages of the process, and also things like yeast nutrient. Another handy tip is that if you type in FLAV, short for flavour, you can then view all the default flavourings. And lastly, I feel that no guide in relation to Brewfather would be complete without first expressing my great gratitude to Thomas, the developer, for the huge amount of time and expertise he has given this software. Just when you think it cannot get any better, then it does. Thomas also tirelessly runs a Facebook group that can be found easily simply by searching for Brewfather within Facebook groups. Within this group he offers very fast support and update information. This now brings this video to a close. If you have any questions, then please let me know via YouTube or Facebook. I do hope that you found this video to be useful, interesting and enjoyable. If appropriate, then please like this video on YouTube, and if you've not done so already, then please subscribe. I regularly post new content. Happy brewing!